Hello everyone, and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. And today is our 100th class. So it's congratulations if you've been watching all the classes. Let me know below if you have watched since the beginning, 100 classes. That's a nice milestone for us to celebrate. And we are here doing the vanaprastha chapter of the Uddhava-gita. So in this chapter, Krishna at this moment, he's describing the platform of vanaprastha, which literally means vana, forest, prastha, staying. So staying in the forest. And this was suggested for people who had lived their lives and had their children, done their jobs, and then they would retire from active social life and live a very simple, renounced life in the forest. And today we're going to see where Krishna is going to be emphasizing the denying the body to free the soul practices. So some hard forms of tapas to make the person disconnect from their bodily identification. So here we are in the 11th canto, doing the 18th chapter, and now we're starting on verse 3. The vanaprastha should not groom the hair on his head, body or face, should not manicure his nails, should not pass stool and urine at irregular times, and should not make a special endeavor for dental hygiene. He should be content to take bath and water 3 times daily and should sleep on the ground. So in the beginning, just rejecting caring for the details of appearance. Like the brahmacharis, you remember that the brahmacharis also were to keep their hair long and not do their nails, and not worry about bodily hair or even teeth too much. So we can see both in the brahmachari ashram and in the vanaprastha, the idea was to kind of reject appearances, to disconnect from this typical thing we do in society, where we worry about our appearances. We're more concerned with other people's opinions, with our bodily identification. So it's a very coarse general rejection of bodily appearance. So they would do that. And also though, but not staying dirty, because one of the most important principles of yoga is socham, cleanliness. It's right there. It's the first item on the list of the niyamas. It's the first thing, socham. And it's always in the list of things to do, because socham directly leads to sattva. Cleanliness directly leads to this higher state of consciousness, sattva. The sattvic lifestyle we want to cultivate as yogis. So they would do 3 daily baths in the river. They would have to bathe themselves 3 times a day. Verse 4. Thus engaged as a vanaprastha, one should execute penance, tapas, during the hottest summer days by subjecting oneself to burning fires on 4 sides and the blazing sun overhead. During the rainy season, one should remain outside, subjecting oneself to torrents of rain, and in the freezing winter, one should remain submerged in water up to one's neck. So this practice is actually still done today. The Tyagis, the renunciate orders like the Ramanandis in North India, this is their most common practice, is to sit under the midday sun with 4 blazing fires. They call this the panchatapa as well, because it's 5 sources of affliction, the sun and the 4 fires. So pancha, 5 tapas, the 5 folded tapa practice. So people do that to this day. And so again, the point here, very hot or very cold in winter, stay in the river up to your neck. in winter, very cold. So these practices are just to generate a disconnect of consciousness to body. So that's the concept of, you see these practices a lot in the scriptures, like just a very harsh treatment of the body. And of course, this isn't just in the yogic tradition. Famously, for example, Christian monks would do it as well. They would wear the hair shirts made of hair, so they're very uncomfortable and prickly. Hair shirts, and even more extreme practices, such as the Opus Dei, with their thigh clinches, making like just a painful thing, biting into their thighs, and other practices, even flogging, like the medieval monks who you'd have the flogging themselves. So this kind of thing is there. Even my mother went to a Christian school, and she said that it was kind of a punishment, but still, they would have to like pray on kneeling on top of rice grains, that kind of like harsh kind of practice, so like, but the idea was just to like, look, disconnect your identity with the body. Understand that you're not the body. So the idea is, if it's very unpleasant, the heat, the cold, the pain, then you'll naturally try to focus on something else. So it's denying the body to, free the soul. It's a bit extreme, and of course we don't all have to do this. In Bhagavad-gita, Krishna doesn't recommend these practices. He doesn't tell Arjuna, doesn't practice any of this stuff. So it's not something you have to do, but again, this is a system. Remember, we're talking about the vanaprastha. This was a general system for all of society. So not everyone was ready to, with their own minds and by their own volition, to cultivate spiritual knowledge and the understanding that they're not the body. And so this was a way to like kind of force the issue. So these practices, these tyagi, these renunciate practices, they kind of force the issues. It's like, you have to, you're obliged to consider your identity with the body in these things. So it's a bit harsh, and again, you don't have to do it. Our spiritual masters don't do it, and it's not something that's done outside of renunciated orders, the tyagis, such as the Ramanandis in North India. It's not something that is practiced normally. Purport. One who engages in sense gratification must perform severe penances at the end of life to counteract his sinful, hedonistic activities. A devotee of the Lord, however, naturally develops Krishna consciousness and need not subject himself to such radical penances. As stated in the Pancharatra, Aradito yadi haris tapasa tatakim, naradito yadi haris tapasa tatakim, antar bahir yadi haris tapasa tatakim, nantar bahir yadi haris tapasa tatakim. If one worships the Lord properly, what is the use of severe penances? And if one is not properly worshipping the Lord, what is the use of severe penances? If Sri Krishna is realized within and without everything that exists, what is the use of severe penances? And if Sri Krishna is not seen within and without everything, then what is the use of severe penances? So this is a very nice quote from the Pancharatra. And that's the whole purpose of the Gita. That's the whole focus of the Gita. Like, you don't have to do these things. You should instead develop proper yoga and connection and bhakti with Krishna. But if you don't develop bhakti with Krishna, then, at least try to become a little more detached from your body. It's like, if you're not going to do the proper thing, at least don't go out of this life all full of attachment and yearning for more, more pleasure and more little silly, tiny pleasures of material life. At least don't do that. So that was the idea. Verse 5. One may eat foodstuffs prepared with fire, such as grains or fruits ripened by time. One may grind one's food with mortar and stone or with one's own teeth. So he's describing the kinds of food you can have, and it's pretty open. You can have, just general, normal kind of food you prepare with fire. You can grind stuff. You can eat fruits. So not too complicated. Purport. In Vedic civilization, it is recommended that at the end of one's life, one should go to a holy place or forest for spiritual perfection. This is the vanaprastha we're looking at here. In sacred forests, one doesn't find restaurants, supermarkets, fast food chains, and so on, and thus one must eat simply, reducing sense gratification. Although in Western countries people eat processed food, one living simply must himself separate and pulverize grains and other foods before eating. This is referred to here. And it turns out that this is actually the healthiest diet. So, all the science now points the way to what we call, the term is whole food plant diet, which is exactly what is being described here for the vanaprastha. This is what we should have as well if you want to live a healthy and long life. Verse 6. The vanaprastha should personally collect whatever he or she requires for his or her bodily maintenance, carefully considering the time, place, and his or her own capacity. He or she should never collect provisions for the future. So this is a very interesting concept. You get what you need according to the situation, but not provisions for the future. This is a type of tapas which is going to be practiced also in the sannyas ashram later on. Just like, don't make all these plans, just depend on fate. Trust God to provide, and if nothing is provided, then trust that it's time to go. So don't even be afraid of starving to death, basically, Don't be afraid of any hardship. Don't make plans today, because that's not the point. The point, if you want, the grihastha ashram is when you make plans. You get a house, and you get money, and that's when you do all these things. But here it's a practice of detaching oneself from the world. Basically, if you took vanaprastha, you're ready to die. You're getting ready to face death. That's what vanaprastha. Again, a yogi should always be ready to face death. So even if you are living in a home, if you're in a grihastha ashram, you should have cultivated this completely already. Be ready for death. Even embrace the concept of death. I know this sounds weird, but as spiritualists, we should embrace the concept of death. Death should not be a scary thing, should not be something you're trying to overly avoid. It's just, you have your dharma, you have your duty. So your duty is to protect yourself, to feed yourself well, to take care of your health. That's your duty. So you perform your duty. But you know that these things don't guarantee that death won't come. The most, heavily armed, protected person will still die. The person with the best medical care at their disposal will still die of disease. That's how it works. You can have all the food in the world, you can be the richest person in the world, and you can still die. So money and power and, security, nothing will protect you from death. Death will come anyway when it's time. But as a spiritualist, you should embrace death. You should be ready for death, not fear death at all. You should have fully developed your consciousness so that you know that you're not your body, that you know that you just want to serve and love Krishna. And you're ready to do that in any situation. You use this body to serve and love Krishna, but you don't need the body. If Krishna wants to take this body away, it's okay for you, because you just have some other situation Krishna wants you to be in where you can still love and serve him. So embracing death is actually an important part of advanced spirituality. So here, again, this is people who aren't actual yogis, but this is a practice to help them get to that stage. So they would not make plans for the future, not get food for the future, no provisions for the future. Only get enough food for today and then live in the here and now like that. Purport. According to Vedic regulations, one practicing austerity should collect only what he requires for immediate use. And upon receiving gifts of foodstuffs, he should immediately give up that which he has previously collected, so that there will be no surplus. This regulation is meant to keep one fixed in faithful dependence on the Supreme Lord. One should never stock food or other bodily necessities for future use. The term Deshakala Balabhidya indicates that in a particularly difficult place or in time of emergency or personal incapacity, this strict rule need not be followed, as confirmed by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur points out that unless one is completely incapacitated, one should not depend on others for one's personal maintenance, as this will create a debt that can only be repaid by taking another birth in the material world. This is an interesting observation. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is a spiritual master in our lineage from the early past century. And he's saying then, don't depend on other people for your because then it's going to create a debt. And then you have to take birth again to repay the debt. This applies only to those endeavoring for personal purification and not for those engaged full-time in devotional service to Lord Krishna. A pure devotee eats, dresses, and speaks only for the service of the Lord, and thus whatever assistance he or she accepts from others is not for himself. He is fully surrendered to the mission of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. However, one not so surrendered will certainly have to take birth again in the material world to repay all of his debts to others. So that's something to consider as well. Verse 7. One who has accepted the vanaprastha order of life should perform seasonal sacrifices by offering oblations of charu and sacrificial cakes prepared from rice and other grains found in the forest. The vanaprastha, however, may never offer animal sacrifices to me, even those sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. So this is a nice verse, because sometimes, just yesterday somebody asked me, is there any confirmation of vegetarianism? I said, no, there's many verses that insist on not killing animals. And this is a nice verse where Krishna is saying directly that even though the vanaprastha should make offerings, here he's suggesting of sacrificial cakes prepared from rice and other grains. They would make these grains with oil, these little cakes, these are little oil cakes. But he's saying never animal sacrifices. So, of course, you should definitely not. That's the worst thing you can do is, as you're approaching death, to accumulate so much horrible karma of killing an animal, even in the name, so-called, of doing a sacrifice. So of course, we, in the yogic path, we don't have anything to do with that, for sure. Purport. One who has taken the vanaprastha order of life should never perform animal sacrifices or eat meat. Verse 8. The vanaprastha should perform the Agnihotra, Darsha, and Purnamasa sacrifices as he did while in the Grihastha ashrama. He should also perform the vows and sacrifices of Chaturmasya, since all of these rituals are enjoyed for the vanaprastha ashram by expert knowers of the Vedas. So here he's suggesting that these, again, this is not the yogic path, this is a general path for all of society. So these general sacrifices recommended in the Vedas apply to these people as well. And here he's suggesting the regular fire, Agnihotra, the fire sacrifices and other sacrifices, and also Chaturmasya, which is it's clearly something strictly for the Indian subcontinent, because it's about the 4 months of rain, and it's a special practice where you have dietary restrictions which would apply for each one of those 4 months, and also other details, but with a focus on dietary restriction. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has given a detailed explanation of the 4 rituals mentioned here, namely Agnihotra, Darsha, Purnamasa, and Chaturmasya. The conclusion is that everyone should simply chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, and avoid the difficult entanglement of Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. If one neither chants Hare Krishna nor performs such rituals, one certainly becomes a Pashandi, an atheistic fool. Verse 9. The saintly vanaprastha, practicing severe tapas and accepting only the bare necessities of life, becomes so emaciated that he appears to be mere skin and bones. Thus, worshipping me through severe tapas, he goes to the Maharloka planet and then directly achieves me. So, now here comes the part of great benefits, the fruits of all this. So you can see this is a path towards death. It's not a practice for, I'm going to do this and live as much as I can with as much comfort and joy. Now this is a different thing. This is like, okay, I'm going to start dying now, so I'm going to go to the forest and we'll see how long I last, kind of thing. But it was a one-way trip, as it were, just I'm out of here. And so this is a way of slowly getting out of here, like becoming detached. And so it's a way of going out, really. And again, as you can see here, he becomes so emaciated, he's just skin and bones. He's like starving to death, which then he'll just lead to death. And by doing that, Krishna says this person goes to Maharloka. So Maharloka is one of the highest planets in the universe. So you have the earthly realm where we are at, and then above this you have a slightly higher realm where you have some special kinds of creatures living in, and then above that you have Swarga, the realm of the demigods. So those are, when you hear the term the 3 worlds, it's the most famous in the 3 worlds. Those are the 3 worlds. So it's Bu, Buvar, and Swar. So you have the 3 worlds, but beyond Swarga, then you have these higher planets, and you have one of them is Maharloka, just below Brahmaloka, the planet of Lord Brahma, the highest of all. So you have Maharloka, very, very special place. So it's way better. This is way, way beyond Swarga, the planet of Indra and the demigods. This is much higher. So the idea was, again, that in this practice of uplifting your consciousness, you could then, just burn all your attachments, burn your karma, and really understand the nature of consciousness, your nature, your identity as consciousness beyond the body. So it's very hard practice, but a hard way to really just detach yourself from matter. And then Krishna says, look, you'd go to Maharloka, and from then, directly to me. So then just from Maharloka, just do some more bhakti, and then you can come directly to me. You wouldn't have to take birth again. If you accumulate good karma, if you're just doing here, being a good person, doing your dharma, again, without yoga, without devotion, then you accumulate all this good karma, and then you get promoted to Swarga. And you get to live or be a demigod or live with a demigod. But then Krishna says, you come back to earth, right? You fall back. So always you go up with these, when you get elevated because of karma, karma runs out. It's like a credit, it's like money. You can get money, but then you spend money and you run out of it. It's exactly like karma. You get karma and then you spend it. You spend good karma with pleasure and you spend bad karma with suffering, but you spend and then you come back. But with this, Krishna says the person will go directly. Of course, what we really want to do is just live a nice life here, right now, doing our dharma in great bhakti and devotion to good Krishna, always thinking of Krishna, so we can just go directly from here back home, back to God. That's what we're focusing on. That's what Yoga Sutras and Bhagavad-gita teach us to do. Purport. A vanaprastha who develops pure devotional service, bhakti, achieves the Supreme Lord Krishna while in the vanaprastha stage of life. One who does not become completely Krishna consciousness, however, first goes to the planet Maharloka or Rishi Loka, and from there directly achieves Lord Krishna. One achieves Maharloka or Rishi Loka through strict observance of positive and negative regulation, yamas and niyamas. However, without developing a taste for chanting and hearing the glories of the Lord, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, it is not possible to achieve the perfect liberation of going back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, on the Maharloka planet, the unsuccessful sage gives more attention to chanting and hearing, and thus he gradually develops pure love of Godhead. And of course, so this is, right now, this is what you should do. You should develop your pure love of Godhead right now through the process of hearing, which is what you're doing now, and kirtanam, which means chanting, speaking, singing the glories of the Lord, as for example, I'm doing right now. So when you do your japa, you do your bhajan, when you're studying Krishna's life, his leelas, or the other avatars, you're studying Bhagavad Purana in general, then this is a very powerful method of bhakti, very powerful way to develop your bhakti, and thus guarantee that from your life, wherever stage you're in, if you're in the grihasta, if you're brahmachari, grihasta, vanaprastha, sannyas, it doesn't matter where you are, no longer, it doesn't make any difference. When you achieve this stage of following the Bhagavad Gita, of living the Bhagavad Gita, of doing everything you do as an offering to Krishna, as Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, whatever you do, do that as an offering unto me. So always think of me, Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, mind and intelligence fixed on me. So if you can do that, if you can follow Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, don't worry, never mind even all the dharmas, take shelter of me alone. That's the final word of Bhagavad Gita, take shelter of me alone. So if you can develop this full bhakti, this full yogic connection to Krishna, where you take full shelter of Krishna, and everything you do in dharma, you're doing for Krishna, for his satisfaction, his pleasure, then this doesn't matter anymore. Now this doesn't apply to us anymore. You don't follow the varnashram anymore. The varnashram is for those who aren't practicing Bhagavad Gita, who aren't practicing Yoga Sutras and Bhagavad Purana. For those who aren't practicing, then okay, you need vanaprastha. You need to go through these stages of life to see if you wake up, if you become detached, if you get that, that spark, that eureka moment where you understand, I really have to take my spiritual life most seriously. It's got to be my priority. As Krishna also says in Bhagavad Gita, Mat paramo, make me your priority. Number one thing in your life is Krishna. Then you're a proper bhakti yogi. Okay, very nice. I hope you enjoyed it, and have the rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love. Hare Krishna.